childbirth, like a lot of kids have brain damage because women's pelvises are so narrow now that their pelvises aren't big enough for the baby's head to fit out the pelvis, and so it gets pinched on the way out. And so even if you like didn't have any obvious trauma, just being born, because women's bodies, from all the mineral deficiencies in the food, their hips aren't fully developing. So yeah, your brain is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, tell me a little bit more about the spinal fluid. You know, the importance of the spinal fluid and the pineal gland, I guess the pituitary gland. Okay. Like how what you do can help with that natural rhythm of the body, because I believe, and that's also from the craniosacral teachings, that every minute, I think, or so, the spinal fluid is washing over the brain, and even more often it does it when we sleep, and it's part of healing of the body, right? So it's important, like, that we have that actually moving through the body, that wave that is also connected to, therefore, kundalini, you know, or chi, or the wave that moves through the body.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this stuff, because I don't think anyone really is, because no one really knows or understands what the stuff that you just mentioned fully. But I just know in general that the fluid that is up in your skull is the same fluid that goes all the way down to your tailbone. So, and it's moving up and down, and it's being circulated, or it should be being circulated. If you have a major block or trauma, or the fascia is, you know, unequally tensioned, that, you know, it might not be flowing. But that's important because it's like the blood for your brain and your nervous system, because it's what you don't really, the blood flow is a separate system in your brain, but the fluid that your brain is actually sitting in and like carries all the neurotransmitters and hormones and stuff is the lymphatic fluid. And so that's why that's so important, that is moving freely, because that fluid it's detoxing your brain, so it's carrying away all the waste from the cells, so that your brain doesn't become toxic, because your brain is like an engine, and it's burning a lot of fuel, and so it has waste products. And if it just sits inside your brain, then your skull becomes like a garbage dump, and you get parasites and all kinds of stuff living up in your head. So you want it moving, and you want it getting cleaned out consistently. I couldn't tell you what this time of the cycle is, but I know that when you sleep, there are certain processes that happen only when you're asleep that clean out your lymphatic system in your head. And even sleeping at a slight angle with your head elevated so it will drain down your head has been shown to like lessen like Alzheimer's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you asked about the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. And there's a lot of directions you could go in with that. But the pineal gland is the gland that sits in the dead center of your skull. And from like an evolutionary perspective, it would lead you to believe that it's very important if it's in the dead center, right? Because that means that it's the most protected part of your brain, and maybe your whole body, really. And so a lot of people believe that that's where your consciousness originates in your body, is actually in the pineal gland, that's like where your soul or
the seat
energy,
of the soul.
Yeah, it comes in there. And so there's a lot of parts of the brain that could get damaged, and a person could theoretically still live, but if a bullet went through your pineal gland, you're probably gone instantly, because if that is what houses your consciousness, and you doesn't have a hard drive to hold your consciousness, then you're no longer with us.
So you would say it's a hard drive for consciousness. The
Yeah,
pineal
the
gland.
pineal
I
gland.
love that.
Yeah. No, I try to look at it as I like the hardware and the software analogy
Yes.
because everyone uses a computer and iPhone, and so it's really a practical way of explaining it, I think. But the pineal gland is also what produces DMT,
Yes.
which is the hallucinogenic molecule that's found in like psychedelic mushrooms and ayahuasca and LSD. And so your brain produces those chemicals naturally, especially when you're dreaming or when you're in like flow states, like creative states. And so we want that pineal gland working optimally so that you can get that endogenous production of it without having to take drugs. Because I'm not saying that drugs are bad, but you don't want to be overly reliant on anything outside of yourself if you have the ability to produce it internally, right? And that pineal gland can get damaged, either through trauma, like physical trauma. It can get poisoned with toxins in our food and water, and so like fluoride and a lot of the vaccines and stuff will damage the pineal gland, and that will shut down DMT production and cut off your connection with God or your spiritual connection. And so when you look at like the idea that there's this conspiracy that somebody or something is trying to cut people off from their spiritual nature, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to think that, because that's where a human being's like innate power comes from their pineal gland and their ability to have this psychedelic experience within themselves without even taking a drug. And so if like a government or religion can prevent that, it's going to make people much more tame and just easier to control. They're not going to be creative and think outside the box and question things. So it's really important to have a high functioning pineal gland if you want to be able to connect with your higher self or really just tap into your full potential as a human being.